The arena remained silent for several long seconds as Commander Zarakai knelt in the center of the ring, her forearms shaking with the effort of supporting her own weight. Her golden eyes stared at the mat beneath her hands, wide with disbelief at what had just happened. The legendary warrior who had conquered 16 worlds could not understand how she had been brought to her knees by what she had considered a weak planet. Dr. Amy Collins broke the stunned silence by rushing from the medical station toward the ring. She moved quickly, but carefully, knowing that approaching a wounded and confused alien warrior could be extremely dangerous. Several security personnel started to follow her, but General Phillips held up a hand to stop them. "Let her go," the general said quietly into her headset. "If we're going to build any kind of relationship with these people, it has to start with trust." Amy climbed into the ring and approached Zarakai slowly, her hands visible and empty. The alien commander's head turned toward her, those fierce golden eyes now showing something that might have been fear. Amy knelt down beside her, close enough to help but far enough away to avoid seeming threatening. "Commander, I'm Dr. Amy Collins. I'm a doctor and a scientist. Will you let me help you?" Amy spoke in a calm, gentle voice, the same tone she used with frightened patience in her medical practice. Zarakai tried to speak, but could only manage a few gasping breaths. Her chest heaved as she struggled to get enough air into her lungs. Sweat continued to pour down her blue scales, and Amy could see that the alien's hands were trembling not just from exhaustion, but from what appeared to be shock. Jake Murphy appeared at the edge of the ring carrying a bottle of cool water and a clean towel. He had changed out of his lifting gear and looked genuinely concerned for the alien commander's well-being. "Can I help, Doc?" Amy nodded and took the water. She offered it to Zarakai, who stared at it for a moment before accepting it with shaking hands. The alien commander drank slowly, some of the liquid spilling down her chin as she tried to control her breathing enough to swallow. "What is happening to me?" Zarakai finally managed to whisper. Her voice, which had been so commanding and powerful during her arrival, now sounded weak and confused. "I am a warrior of the Kefmori Empire. I have never shown weakness in battle." Amy chose her words carefully. "Commander, your planet and Earth have very similar gravity, but there are other differences that your body has been fighting against since you arrived. Our atmosphere is denser than yours. The humidity is much higher. Even the mixture of gases is slightly different. Each factor alone might not matter much, but together they've been wearing down your system." Lisa Kane had joined them in the ring, kneeling on Zarakai's other side. "It's not weakness, Commander. Your body has been working twice as hard as normal just to function in our environment. Any of us would have the same problems on your world." Zarakai looked between the humans surrounding her, searching their faces for signs of mockery or triumph. Instead, she saw only concern and what appeared to be genuine desire to help. This was not what she had expected from a conquered species. In her experience, defeated enemies either cowered in fear or sought revenge. These humans were doing neither. "Why? Do you help me?" she asked, her voice growing slightly stronger as her breathing began to stabilize. "I came here to conquer your world. I threatened your people. You should be celebrating my defeat or preparing to execute me." Carl Johnson, still wearing his running gear from the endurance race, spoke from just outside the ring. "Because that's what humans do, Commander. We help people who are hurt, even if they're our enemies, especially if they're our enemies." "Staff." Sergeant Maria Santos stepped forward, offering her hand to help Zarakai stand. "The fight is over, Commander. You fought with honor, and you lost with honor. Now we take care of each other." Zarakai stared at Maria's outstretched hand for a long moment. In Kefmori culture, accepting help from a victorious opponent was considered the ultimate humiliation. But something about these humans was different from any species she had encountered. In her military career, she reached out slowly and grasped Maria's hand. With Maria's support and Amy's medical guidance, Zarakai managed to stand on unsteady legs. The crowd in the stadium began to applaud, not in mockery, but in recognition. of both fighters' courage. The alien commander looked up at the thousands of humans and saw respect in their faces rather than hatred. Phillips entered the ring accompanied by Ambassador Ron Hayes. The general approached Zarkai with the same respectful demeanor she had shown during their first meeting. Commander, you fought well today. All of our champions were impressed by your skill and determination. Ambassador Hayes stepped forward with a formal document. Commander Zarkai, on behalf of the governments of Earth, I want to present you with this certificate of honor. It recognizes your courage in accepting our challenge and your grace in defeat. We hope it will serve as a symbol of the respect between our peoples. Zarkai accepted the certificate with trembling hands, staring at the elaborate calligraphy and official seals. No species had ever honored her for losing a battle. The concept was so foreign to her experience that she struggled to understand what it meant. I do not understand you humans, she said, looking around at the faces surrounding her. In my empire, the weak serve the strong. The defeated are enslaved or eliminated. Yet you show kindness to someone who came here to destroy your civilization. Jake smiled and shrugged. Maybe that's why we're still here, Commander. We've learned that making friends is usually better than making enemies. Takes less energy and everybody ends up happier. Dr. Collins had been monitoring Zarakai's condition throughout the conversation. Commander, you're going to need some time to recover and adjust to our environment. Your ship's medical facilities might not be equipped to help with this kind of environmental stress. Would you consider letting our doctors work with your crew to develop better treatments? Zarakai considered this offer carefully. Accepting human medical assistance will be another sign of weakness that her empire might not understand. But her experience over the past few days had taught her that human weakness might actually be a different kind of strength. Yes, she said finally, I will accept your help. And I will also send a message to the Hegemony Council that Earth is not a world to be conquered. General Phillips nodded approvingly. What will you tell them about us? Zarakai straightened as much. Her exhausted condition would allow some of her old commanding presence returning. I will tell them that the humans of Earth are not weak creatures to be enslaved. I will tell them that your planet's environment would challenge even our strongest warriors. Most importantly, I will tell them that you are a people worth knowing, as allies rather than conquering as enemies. She paused and looked directly at each of the humans who had helped her. You have shown me something I have never seen in all my years of conquest. You have shown mercy to a fallen enemy and turned defeat into the beginning of friendship. This is a strength that no weapon can match and no army can overcome. Ambassador Hayes smiled. Commander, we will be honored to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Kethmori Empire. Perhaps your people and ours can learn from each other. As Zarakai was helped from the ring by her new human friends, she realized that her 17th world would not be a conquest after all. Instead, it would be something entirely new in her experience, a partnership between equals built on mutual respect rather than domination. The alien warrior who had thought Earth's gravity was a joke had learned that true strength came not from the ability to conquer others, but from the wisdom to lift them up instead. Mile 8 of the race brought Zarakai face to face with a reality she had never encountered before. Her legs felt like they were made of stone, each step requiring conscious effort that should have been automatic. Carl Johnson had pulled ahead by 10 yards and was maintaining that lead with what appeared to be minimal effort. The human's breathing was steady and controlled while hers had become ragged gasps that echoed off the surrounding buildings. The alien commander's forearms pumped desperately as she tried to match Carl's pace, but her coordination was breaking down. On Keth Prime, she could run for hours without fatigue, covering vast distances across rough terrain while carrying full combat gear. Now she was struggling to keep up with a single human on flat pavement with no equipment at all. Sweat poured down her blue scales and sheets, something her crew watching from the stadium had never witnessed. Sub-Commander Vexstar stood at the viewing platform aboard their ship, his own forearms crossed in growing concern. This is not possible, he muttered to the other officers. Commander Zarakai has never shown weakness in any physical challenge. Back on the course, Carl glanced over his shoulder and saw the alien commander's distress. His military training told him to press his advantage, but his human compassion made him uncomfortable with her obvious suffering. He maintained his pace, but did not attempt to increase it, giving her a chance to recover if she could dot by mile 9. Zarakai was falling further behind. Her legendary warrior's pride was the only thing keeping her moving forward. She had conquered 16 worlds, led countless battles, and earned the respect of the entire Kefmori Empire through her strength and determination. She could not, would not, lose to a human in front of thousands of witnesses. Carl crossed the finish line to thunderous applause from the human crowd. He immediately turned to watch for Zarakai, knowing that her arrival would determine whether humanity had achieved the impossible or merely delayed their conquest. The alien commander appeared around the final corner, her form visibly struggling, but still moving with the stubborn determination of a true warrior. She crossed the finish line 30 seconds behind Carl, her chest heaving as she fought for breath. The crowd's cheers were mixed with shocked murmurs. The human champion had actually outrun the supposedly superior alien commander. Zarakai stood with her hands on her knees, trying to recover her composure before the final challenge. Dr. Amy Collins watched the commander's vital signs on her monitoring equipment from the medical station. Heart rate elevated far beyond normal ranges. Respiratory distress indicators flashing red. Body temperature readings showing signs of overheating. General, she spoke into her headset, the alien's biological systems are showing severe stress. I'm not sure she should continue. General Phillips responded quietly. That's not our call to make, Doctor. This was her challenge, her terms. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had been watching both previous competitions from the preparation area, studying Zarakai's movements and condition. As a marine martial artist with 15 years of combat experience, she understood better than most how physical exhaustion could affect fighting ability. The alien commander was clearly compromised, but that might make her more dangerous rather than less so. The final challenge arena was a circular combat ring in the center of the stadium floor. Standard martial arts rules would apply. No weapons, no killing strikes, victory by submission, or inability to continue. Maria stepped into the ring wearing simple military fatigues and light protective gear. She looked tiny compared to her opponent, but her movements were fluid and confident. Zarakai entered the ring with visible effort, trying to project her usual aura of dominance despite her exhaustion. Her ceremonial armor had been removed for the combat, revealing the powerful musculature that had made her famous throughout the Empire. Even weakened, she was still an imposing figure with 4 arms and superior reach. The referee, a neutral United Nations official, called both fighters to the center. This is combat until submission or incapacitation. No weapons, no strikes intended to cause permanent harm. Are both competitors ready? Maria nodded calmly. Zarakai straightened to her full height and glared down at the human woman. I am ready to end this charade. The fight began with Zarakai's traditional dominance display. Despite her fatigue, she launched into an aggressive series of strikes designed to overwhelm her opponent immediately. Her 4 arms moved in complex patterns, throwing punches from multiple angles simultaneously. It was an impressive sight that had terrified enemies across the galaxy. But Maria had spent months training for exactly this scenario. She had studied every piece of footage they had of Kefmori combat techniques. More importantly, she could see that Zarakai's movements lacked their earlier precision. The alien strikes were powerful but telegraphed. Her footwork heavy and predictable. Maria slipped and dodged, using her smaller size and superior conditioning to avoid the worst of Zarakai's attacks. She landed quick counterstrikes when opportunities presented themselves, targeting pressure points and vulnerable areas she had identified during her preparation. As the combat intensified, Zarakai's breathing became increasingly labored. Her strikes, while still dangerous, were noticeably slower than they had been during her arrival demonstrations. Sweat continued to pour down her scaled skin, and her forearms began to show signs of uncoordinated movement. Maria adapted her strategy, using the alien's overconfidence and exhaustion against her. She stayed mobile, forcing Zarakai to chase her around the ring. Every missed strike cost the alien commander energy she could not afford to waste. Every successful dodge built Maria's confidence while increasing her opponent's frustration. Crowd watched in amazement as their human champion not only survived the initial assault, but began to take control of the fight. Maria's training and experience were proving superior to raw physical power, especially when that power was compromised by environmental factors the alien refused to acknowledge. Zarakai grew increasingly desperate as the fight progressed. She attempted more aggressive techniques, throwing wild combinations that left her off balance. Her warrior's pride would not allow her to admit weakness, even to herself. She had to win this fight, or face the unthinkable prospect of failure. The critical moment came when Zarakai decided to end the combat with her signature finishing move. It was a devastating forearm grapple that had never failed her in actual combat. She had used it to defeat the champions of dozen worlds, earning her reputation as an unstoppable warrior. She lunged forward with all her remaining strength, attempting to wrap all four arms around Maria in an inescapable hold. It was a move that required perfect timing, coordination, and explosive power. Under normal circumstances, no human could have avoided or countered it, but these were not normal circumstances. As Zarakai committed to her attack, her exhausted legs betrayed her. The accumulated effects of Earth's atmosphere, the physical challenges, and her refusal to acknowledge her limitations finally overwhelmed her enhanced physiology. Her left leg buckled just as she reached for Maria. Her right leg could not compensate for the sudden shift in weight and balance. The proud warrior who had dismissed Earth as weak found herself falling forward, unable to control her momentum or execute her signature technique. Zarakai crashed to her knees in the center of the ring, her forearms trembling as she struggled to support her own weight. The arena fell silent except for her labored breathing. For the first time in her adult life, the legendary commander could not stand under her own power. She knelt there, gasping for air she could not seem to get enough of, while thousands of the inferior humans she had come to conquer watched from the stands above. Her golden eyes stared at the mat beneath her hands. Unable to believe what had happened, Maria stood a few feet away, ready to continue the fight if necessary, but clearly recognizing that her opponent was defeated. The referee began his count, but everyone in the arena already knew the outcome. The unstoppable alien warrior had been brought to her knees not by superior force, but by her own failure to understand the world she had sought to conquer. The massive Denver Stadium had been transformed overnight into an arena worthy of an interplanetary challenge. Thousands of humans filled the seats, their voices creating a low rumble of excitement and fear. Giant screens had been installed to broadcast every moment to the billions watching around the world. This was humanity's moment of truth, and everyone knew it. Commander Zarakai strode into the arena with her usual confidence, her blue scales gleaming under the bright lights. She wore her ceremonial combat armor, polished to a mirror shine for this occasion. Her forearms moved in perfect coordination as she acknowledged the crowd with a dismissive wave. To the humans watching, she looked like an unstoppable force. Of nature. Jake Murphy stood at the human preparation area, trying to calm his nerves. He had been chosen for the strength competition based on his powerlifting background, but he knew the odds were against him. Beside him, Master Sergeant Carl Johnson stretched his legs in preparation for the endurance run. Staff Sergeant Maria sat to shadowbox nearby, her movements quick and precise as she prepared for the final combat challenge. General Phillips spoke into her headset from the command booth. All teams ready. Dr. Collins, are you monitoring the aliens' vital signs through our remote sensors? Amy's voice crackled back through the radio. Confirm, General? I'm tracking everything our equipment can detect. Her baseline readings are already elevated compared to her arrival day. The first challenge was announced to the crowd. Pure strength, measured by progressive weightlifting until one competitor could no longer continue. A specially constructed platform held weights that could be added in precise increments. The rules were simple. Lift the weight cleanly overhead and hold it for 3 seconds. Fail to do so, and you lose. Zarakai approached the platform with obvious confidence. The starting weight was 500 pounds, something she could normally lift with 2 arms while barely trying. She positioned herself beneath the bar, gripped it with all 4 hands, and lifted it smoothly overhead. The crowd gasped at the display of raw power. She held the weight steady for the required 3 seconds before setting it down with perfect control. Jake stepped up next. At 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, he looked tiny compared to the alien commander. He had been powerlifting since high school and held several regional records, but this was different. He approached the bar, took his grip, and lifted with everything he had. The weight came up slowly, but steadily. His face turned red with effort as he pressed it overhead and held it for the required time. The crowd erupted in cheers. "They're human." Champion had matched the alien's opening lift. Zarakai's golden eyes narrowed as she looked at Jake with new interest. She had expected the human to fail immediately. The weight was increased to 600 pounds. Zarakai lifted it again, but Jake noticed something the crowd missed. Her breathing was heavier than before, and she took a moment longer to set up for the lift. When Jake's turn came, he managed to match her again, though the effort left him. Shaking Dot at 700 pounds, both competitors were showing strain. Zarakai's perfect form began to show small flaws. Her grip adjustment took longer, and sweat was visible on her scaled skin. The crowd was going wild as Jake somehow kept pace with the supposedly superior alien warrior. 800 pounds broke Jake's limit. He managed to get the weight to his chest, but couldn't press it overhead. He stepped back, breathing hard but proud of how far he had pushed himself. Zarakai approached the weight with determination, but something was wrong. She lifted the bar from the ground easily enough, but as she tried to press it overhead, her arms shook visibly. She got it halfway up before her strength failed, and she had to lower it back down. The alien commander stared at the weight in disbelief. 800 pounds should have been well within her capabilities. On Kef Prime, she could lift 1,000 pounds without strain. She tried again, focusing all her power, but the result was the same. Her arms simply would not cooperate. Jake stepped forward, extending his hand. "Good competition, Commander. That was closer than anyone expected." Zarakai ignored the offered handshake, her pride wounded by the unexpected difficulty. "The second challenge," she announced loudly. "We will see who truly has endurance." The 10-mile course had been marked around the stadium and through parts of the city. Carl Johnson, a marathon runner with 20 years of military service, would face the alien commander in a test of sustained speed and stamina. This was where most humans expected their chances to improve, since distance running was something humans excelled at compared to most Earth species. Zara single quotes, Kai took her position at the starting line, her breathing still elevated from the strength. Challenge. She had not been given time to fully recover, but she refused to ask for a delay. Carl stood beside her, looking calm and relaxed despite the magnitude of what he was about to attempt. The starting gun fired, and Zarakai exploded from the line like a sprinter. Her powerful legs launched her forward at a pace that left Carl far behind in the first 100 yards. The crowd watched in amazement as she bounded down the track with huge, graceful strides that covered ground at an incredible rate. By the end of the first mile, Zarakai had built a lead of nearly a quarter mile. She felt strong and confident, her warrior's pride restored after the disappointing strength challenge. This was more like what she had expected. The human would never catch up to her superior Kefmori physiology. Carl maintained his steady pace, the same rhythm he had used to complete dozens of marathons and ultramarathons during his military career. He watched Zarakai's distant form and noticed she was running like someone who had never raced a distance longer than a few miles. Her pace was unsustainable for the distance they had to cover by mile 3. Zarakai's breathing had become labored. Her strides were still long and powerful, but they lacked the effortless quality they had shown at the start. She found herself having to concentrate on maintaining her form, something that had never been necessary before Doc Carl had closed the gap to about 1/8 of a mile. His pace remained unchanged, steady and controlled. Years of training had taught him how to manage his energy over long distances. He could see that Zarakai was running too fast for her current condition. Whatever was causing her difficulties at mile 5, the alien commander was still in the lead, but her advantage was shrinking. Her powerful legs were beginning to feel heavy, and she was breathing harder than she ever had during a run on Kef Prime. She told herself this was just the effect of the unfamiliar course, and the pressure of competition. Mile 6 brought a troubling realization. Carl was now only 50 yards behind her, and the gap was closing steadily. Zarakai could hear his footsteps echoing off the pavement, a constant reminder that her supposedly inferior opponent was gaining on her. She tried to increase her pace, but her body would not respond as it should. The crowd along the course could see both runners now as they passed through the city streets. Zarakai's form was becoming ragged, her forearms pumping frantically as she fought to maintain speed. Carl looked like he could run for hours more at his current pace. At mile 7, Carl pulled even with the alien commander. For the first time in her life, Zarakai found herself in a close race with someone she had expected to dominate completely. Her golden eyes darted sideways to study her human opponent, looking for signs of the fatigue that was now coursing through her own body. Carl looked back at her and nodded respectfully. "Good pace, Commander. How are you feeling?" Zarakai was too breathless to answer without revealing her distress. She simply glared at him and tried to summon another burst of speed. Her legs responded sluggishly, and she realized with growing alarm that she might actually lose this race to a human. Dr. Amy Collins sat in her laboratory at the Denver Research Center, watching the recorded footage of Commander Zarakai's arrival for the 10th time. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been tasked with analyzing everything they could learn about the Kef Mori physiology. The government wanted to know what they were dealing with, and Amy was their best hope of finding answers. She paused the video at the moment when Zarakai lifted the boulder. Something about the alien's posture caught her attention. Amy zoomed in on the commander's face and enhanced the image. There it was, so subtle that most people would miss it, but Amy's trained eye spotted the telltale signs. Zarakai's breathing was slightly elevated, more than it should have been for someone supposedly handling a trivial task. Amy rewound to watch the alien's initial emergence from the ship. She slowed the playback and studied every movement. Zarakai moved with obvious confidence and grace, but there were tiny details that suggested something else. A barely noticeable pause as she stepped onto Earth's surface. A micro-adjustment in her stance after the first few steps. Her left hand brushing against the ship's hull for just a moment, as if seeking support. Computer, analyze atmospheric conditions at landing site during alien arrival, Amy commanded. Data flowed across her secondary monitor. Earth's atmospheric pressure at Denver's altitude was 12.2 pounds per square inch. Humidity levels had been at 68%. Temperature was 72 degrees Fahrenheit. She cross-referenced this with the data they had managed to gather about Kef Prime from the alien ship's communications. The gravity readings were indeed nearly identical, but that was only one factor. Kef Prime had an atmospheric pressure of 10.4 pounds per square inch, significantly lower than Earth's. The humidity on the alien homeworld rarely exceeded 30%. These differences might seem small, but Amy knew that even minor environmental changes could have major effects on biological systems, especially over time. Amy picked up her secure phone and called General Kate Phillips at Earth Defense Command. "General, I need to share something important about our alien visitor." Meanwhile, at the landing site, Zarakai was attempting her daily training routine inside the temporary camp she had established. Her ship's fabrication systems had created a small shelter and training area designed to replicate the conditions of a Kefmori military outpost. She began with her standard warm-up exercises, movements that had been drilled into her since childhood. 1,000 push-ups had always been effortless for her. On Kef Prime, she could complete them in perfect form without breaking concentration. Today, something felt different. By the time she reached 500, her breathing had become noticeably heavier. At 700, sweat began to form on her scaled skin, something that usually only happened during intense combat or extreme exertion. Zarakai paused at 800, resting in the up position. This was impossible. She was Commander Zarakai, first sword of the elite strike force. Her physical conditioning was legendary even among the Kefmori. She forced herself to continue, grinding out each repetition with increasing difficulty. She managed to complete 900 before her. Arms began to shake. At 950, she finally stopped. Unable to maintain proper form, she stood up quickly, looking around to make sure none of her crew had witnessed this moment of weakness. The camp was empty except for her. Zarakai told herself. This was simply fatigue from the long journey through space. It had been months since they left the last conquered world, and even warriors needed time to adjust after extended space travel. She moved on to her jumping exercises, a routine designed to maintain the explosive leg strength that made Kefmori warriors so formidable in battle. On Kef Prime, she could easily leap 20 feet horizontally and 15 feet vertically. These were basic measurements that every warrior was expected to maintain throughout their career. Her first jump felt sluggish. She covered only 16 feet instead of her usual 20. Zarakai shook her head and tried again, focusing her energy and technique. 17 feet. Another attempt brought 18 feet, but the effort required was far greater than normal. By her 10th jump, she was breathing hard and her legs felt heavy. Captain Ben Rodriguez watched from his concealed observation post half a mile away. The former Navy SEAL had been assigned to study the alien commander's capabilities and habits. Through his high-powered telescope, he could see every detail of Zarakai's training session. Ben had spent 20 years analyzing enemy combatants, and he recognized the signs of someone whose performance was declining. Ben made careful notes in his field journal. The alien's jump distances were decreasing with each attempt. Her recovery time between exercises was increasing. Most telling of all, she kept pausing to catch her breath, something that hadn't happened during her dramatic demonstrations for the human representatives 3 days earlier. He radioed back to base using an encrypted channel. Control, this is Observer 1. Target appears to be experiencing performance degradation during training. Recommend continued monitoring. Back at the research center, Amy was compiling her analysis for the emergency briefing that General Phillips had called. She had spent the last 2 days running computer simulations of how Kefmori physiology might respond to Earth's environment. The results were fascinating and potentially crucial for humanity's survival. The higher atmospheric pressure would force the alien's respiratory system to work harder to process each breath. The increased humidity would affect their body's natural cooling mechanisms. Even the slightly different atmospheric composition could impact their cellular oxygen absorption over time. Individually, these factors might be manageable, but together they created a cumulative effect that would gradually wear down even the prori. But together they created a cumulative effect that would gradually wear down even the strongest Kefmori warrior. Amy's projection suggested that Zarakai's physical capabilities would continue to decline the longer she remained on Earth. The question was whether the deterioration would be significant enough to matter in the upcoming challenge, and whether the proud alien commander would even notice what was happening to her daughter at the government briefing room. Ambassador Ron Hayes was reviewing the psychological profile that Earth's best analysts had compiled on Commander Zarakai. The alien leader showed classic signs of extreme pride and confidence, traits that could work in humanity's favor. Her species appeared to value strength and dominance above all else. which meant she would be unlikely to admit weakness or ask for help, even if she was struggling. General Phillips entered the room carrying Amy's preliminary report. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have found our edge. Dr. Collins has discovered something about our alien visitor that could change everything. Zara Kai completed her training session feeling more frustrated than she had in years. Nothing felt right. Her movements lacked their usual power and precision. Her endurance seemed diminished. Her strength felt somehow muted, as if she was trying to fight while wearing heavy weights. She refused to consider that Earth itself might be the problem. The planet's readings were so similar to Kef Prime that any difficulties had to be temporary. Perhaps her equipment needed recalibration. Perhaps the ship's artificial gravity had malfunctioned during the journey. Perhaps she simply needed more rest. As the sun set over Denver, Zarakai stood at the edge of her camp looking toward the human city. In 2 days, she would face their champions in combat and prove once again that the Kethmori Empire was unstoppable. Whatever was causing her current difficulties would surely resolve itself by then. It had to, because failure was not an option for a warrior of her standing. She did not notice that her breathing was still slightly labored even while standing. Still, or that her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she gripped the railing of her observation platform. The massive alien warship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a dark storm cloud, its hull gleaming black against the morning sky over Denver. The ship was enormous, easily the size of 3 city blocks, with sharp edges and weapon ports. That looked ready for war. Lieutenant Jake Murphy watched through his binoculars from the designated landing zone, his hands steady despite the knot in his stomach. Beside him, Sergeant Lisa Kane checked her equipment one more time, though they both knew their standard military gear would be useless against alien technology. Contact in 30 seconds, came the voice through Jake's earpiece from command. He looked at Lisa, who gave him a quick nod. They had trained for this moment ever since the aliens first made contact 3 weeks ago, demanding to speak with Earth's leaders. The message had been simple and terrifying: surrender or face conquest. Now their representative was coming down to make it official. The ship touched down with surprising gentleness, its landing legs extending to settle on the concrete pad that had been hastily constructed for this meeting. Steam hissed from various ports along the hull as the engines powered down. Jake felt the ground vibrate under his boots from the ship's massive weight. A section of the hull began to glow and then simply disappeared, creating a perfect rectangular opening. She emerged like something from humanity's worst nightmares, yet also strangely magnificent. Commander Zarkai of the Kethmori Empire stood, 7 feet tall, her blue-scaled skin catching the sunlight in brilliant flashes. She had 4 powerful arms, each one ending in hands with long, sharp fingers that could probably crush bone without effort. Her face was angular and fierce, with golden eyes that seemed to look right through the humans waiting for her. She wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, dark metal plates that covered her torso and upper arms, leaving her lower arms free to move. Jake had read the briefing files, but seeing her in person was different. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight, never backed down, never shown weakness. Each step was precise and purposeful as she walked down the ramp that had extended from her ship. 2 smaller aliens followed her, probably guards or advisors, but Jake's attention stayed fixed on the commander. "Remember the protocol," Lisa whispered without moving her lips. "Show respect, but not submission." It was a fine line they had to walk. Earth's leaders wanted to avoid immediate war, but they also couldn't appear weak. Jake straightened his shoulders and stepped forward as Zarakai approached. "Commander Zarakai," Jake said, giving a slight bow as they had practiced. "I am Lieutenant Jake Murphy of the Earth Defense Corps. This is Sergeant Lisa Kane. We welcome you to Earth on behalf of our governments." Zarakai stopped about 10 feet away, her golden eyes studying them with what looked like amusement. When she spoke, her voice was deep and resonant, with an accent that made every word sound like a command. "So these are the creatures that inhabit This little world. You are even smaller than our scans indicated. She crossed all four arms over her chest in what was clearly a display of superiority. I am Commander Zarkai, First Sword of the Hegemony's elite strike force, conqueror of 16 worlds, bearer of the Golden Claw of Victory. I speak for the Kefmori Empire, and I bring you terms for your surrender. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, but they both maintained their composure. With respect, Commander, we are here to discuss peaceful relations between our peoples. Earth's leaders are hoping we can find common ground without conflict. Zarakai laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Common ground? Little human, look. Around you. She gestured with two of her arms toward the landscape surrounding the landing zone. Your gravity reads almost identical to my homeworld. 9.8 meters per second squared, barely different from Keth Prime's 9.6. Your atmosphere contains the gases we can breathe. Your sun provides adequate warmth. This world was made for conquest. She began to pace back and forth in front of them, her movements fluid and predatory. But do not think similarity makes you equal to us. We Kefmori have conquered worlds with gravity twice this strong and atmospheres that would poison lesser beings. Your Earth is soft, comfortable, weak. Perfect for farming, or perhaps a vacation colony for our warriors after they grow tired of battle. To demonstrate her point, Zarakai walked over to a large boulder that sat near the edge of the landing pad, probably weighing several hundred pounds. Without apparent effort, she wrapped two arms around it and lifted it over her head. Her muscles barely seemed to strain under the weight. Then, with a quick motion, she hurled the boulder 50 feet through the air, where it crashed into the ground and split into several pieces. This is what passes for strength on your world, she said, brushing dust from her hands. Child's play for a Kefmori warrior. Lisa spoke up for the first time. Commander, we don't doubt your physical abilities, but strength isn't the only measure of a civilization's worth. Perhaps we could show you some of what humanity has accomplished. Zarakai's golden eyes fixed on Lisa with sudden interest. A female warrior speaks. Interesting. On most worlds we conquer, the females hide behind their males when death approaches. You show some spirit, human. She walked closer to Lisa, towering over her. Very well. I'm curious about your accomplishments. But first, let me show you more of what you face. Without warning, Zarakai crouched down and then launched herself into the air. She soared upward in a perfect arc, rising at least 15 feet off the ground before landing gracefully 20 feet away. The impact of her landing sent small vibrations through the concrete pad. We Kefmori are bred for war, she said, walking back toward them. Every child learns to fight before they learn to speak. Every adult has conquered at least one enemy world. I myself have led the charge on 16. Different planets, each one certain they could resist the Empire's might. Jake tried to keep his voice steady. What happened to the people on those worlds? The wise ones surrendered quickly and were given places in our empire as servants and workers. They live, they serve, they find purpose in contributing to something greater than their small worlds could ever achieve. Zarakai's expression grew colder. The foolish ones who chose to fight were eliminated. We do not waste time with those who cannot accept reality. She looked directly at both humans. Earth will be my 17th conquest. The question is whether your people are wise or foolish. Lisa stepped forward slightly. Commander, would you be willing to participate in a formal challenge ceremony? It's a human tradition when meeting new peoples. A way to demonstrate capabilities on both sides before making important decisions. Zarakai's forearms uncrossed, and for the first time she looked genuinely interested. A challenge? You wish to test your strength against mine? Tests of strength, endurance, and skill, Jake added. If you're confident in Kefmori's superiority, it should be easy for you to prove it. The alien commander's laugh was different this time, less mocking and more approving. I like this idea, humans. Yes, let. Use have your challenge ceremony. When your champions fail, your people will understand the futility of resistance. When do we begin? 3 days from now, Lisa said. That will give both sides time to prepare properly. Zarakai nodded. 3 days then. I will establish a camp here and wait. Do not think to use this time for treachery, humans. My ships. Weapons can turn your city to glass in moments if needed. She turned and began walking back toward her ship, then paused and looked over her shoulder. I look forward to showing you what real strength looks like.